Let's Talk Oculus, a VR podcast, is proudly sponsored by the good folks at Patreon. If you want to support the show, join us on patreon.com/Let's Talk Oculus. What's up, Oculus nerds? Welcome back to Let's Talk Oculus episode 134. I'm your host, as always, Dan from Playtest VR. And in a moment, I'm going to be joined by Sara Cohen, the VP of Content Creation at Headspace. And I'm beyond excited to share this interview with you. To have Headspace on this show has been an absolute blessing, and we'll get into that in a second. But before we get into the interview, I just want to announce that next week, Samson is going to be back on the show. And I'm so happy to have him back and go back to some regular scheduling programming. And thank you so much for everyone with their patience for this month. You know, we've had quite a few guests on. I even did a solo podcast at the beginning of the month. But next week, we're going to go back to a regular podcast. We'll still have guests, of course, but a bit of the regular scheduling program to begin. And probably we'll save all the news stories for next week. You know, it looks like Meta has opened its OS for other platforms. It's going to come with a limited edition Xbox version of the Quest, which is really interesting. You know, there's a lot of things to talk about, as well as what I've been playing and obviously what Samson has been playing since he's been away. So we'll save all that for next week's show. So definitely get excited for that. But for this week, we've got Sara on, and Headspace's app is a meditation app on iPhone, and they've got a TV show on Netflix, and now they've got the Headspace XR, which is the VR app or mixed reality app, or a bit of both. That's why it's obviously XR on the Quest, and it's been out for just over a month, I think, now, and it definitely has a lot of potential. It's one of those apps that has been released in, I would say, more of a baby phase kind of thing. Headspace are learning about their users, and it's a different approach to meditation from even just XR app standpoints. You know, you've got apps like Trip, which are fantastic in its own right, but Headspace have gone the route where it's going to be like a mindfulness playground where you jump in, maybe you share the experiences with friends, and really perform some energy flowing, some mixed reality with some box breathing and such like that. Like, there's a bunch of activities in there. And before we get into the interview, I just want to kind of go off with my own kind of story with Headspace. I discovered Headspace in 2017, and it was an important part of my life, to be honest. I had a major breakup from a 4-year relationship, and probably 3 months later, I discovered meditation. I didn't really, look into it before. So I downloaded the Headspace app on the phone. It was way less of what the app is now. Right now, there's so much content in the app that there's so much different types of meditation and such. But back then, it was just simply, a few courses in meditation, and that was it. And I began meditating for just 10 minutes a day from December. Sorry, it wasn't 2017. It was 2018. From December 2018 till, for a long time. But the thing is that the stretch from December up until May, I was also doing my master's degree at that time as well. And I was definitely not in the right headspace, pardon the pun and such, going into that final year, my master's year at university. And Headspace definitely helped me clear my mind and be okay with my thoughts and such. And I'm not going to lie, I performed the best I ever did in those exams, in those final exams in May. I didn't get a better score throughout my whole 4 years being at university. That fourth year was the best year by far, and that was after going through a massive breakup at the start of the year and my head being all over the place. So I have a lot of praise for Headspace and meditation in general, and it's definitely something that I've kind of maybe not been as consistent nowadays. Something that I definitely need to get back into just 10 minutes a day. But if you've never tried anything like it, I definitely recommend trying it. Meditation is not just sitting there and just closing your eyes for 10 minutes. There's so much more to that. There's different breath work. There's also ways you can do like a body scan. And, in the Headspace XR app, there are basically games, playful games to kind of just ease your mind, calm your mind. And I'd highly recommend, if not this app, then at least just trying meditation. They're also on Netflix as well, so you could just try it. I'm sure everyone's got a Netflix subscription and such. But anyway, that's my own like personal journey going into this. So I was super excited to get them on the show to talk to them about their app and about meditation in general. And if you like this show, if you like content like this, let me know in the comments, let me know in the Discord, and we'll be sure to have more conversations like this in the future. But for now, without further ado, let's get straight into, I'm going to go, welcome to part 2, because this has been like a very, very mini part 1. But I look forward to having Samson back next week, and I look forward to having a jumbo podcast next week with all the news. But that will do for probably the quickest part 1 in LTO history. And in part 2, we have the interview. So enjoy.
Hey, we know public lobbies in VR games can be a bit toxic, feel a bit empty at times. That's why we created the Let's Talk Oculus Discord, a friendly community that you can join for multiplayer meetups, general VR chat, the game, and chat about VR, fitness motivation, and there's even a very impressive 3D printing channel. Join over 100 of our community members in the Let's Talk Oculus Discord for free. The link is right in the description.
Welcome back to part 2, where I'm joined by Sara Cohen, VP of Content Creation at Headspace, the meditation and mindfulness app that have just released, it's about a month ago now, their first ever XR app on the Quest 3. Sara, welcome to the show, and thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here and share more about Headspace XR.
Absolutely. I think the best way to start this is, can you just explain to the people listening, like, what is Headspace XR? Like, what is Headspace in general, actually?
Okay, so Headspace in general is now, right, a lifelong guide to your mental health journey. So Headspace started out as a mental health app, a mindfulness and meditation focused app that was really about helping people cultivate a meditation practice to be able to take care of their mental well-being. So there's tons of content in the app for almost every need state that you could encounter throughout your life, to be able to feel better. The whole mission of Headspace was to honestly bring health and happiness to the world, help improve people's health and happiness. And so that was really why the mobile app was created, to bring mindfulness and meditation to the masses. And it was at a time, I think, where mobile apps were sort of just booming. And we really wanted to be a light in a space that, tech in your pocket there's a lot of dark there too. So that's Headspace, and where we're moving as Headspace is we are actually offering care services to all of our B2B clients. So people who get Headspace as a benefit through their companies can also get, depending on their plan and their coverage, access to coaching, therapy, and psychiatry. We are moving the consumer market there as well, and have some announcements coming out soon, which is really, really exciting. But the idea is that really we are the full mental health offering. So if you're you're talking to a coach or you're talking to your therapist, they can recommend content for you within the product that you can then utilize in between your sessions, and hopefully be able to feel better about whatever you're dealing with for longer, and really be able to scale your care. So that's Headspace, and obviously, we're offered globally. Over 100 million people have downloaded the app. We're in 190 countries, but Headspace XR, which is really why we're here today, is a whole new offering from Headspace. Meta really came to us and asked us, hey, like, what could Headspace look like in a Quest headset? And it got us really thinking about how we could differentiate our product from our 2D app to a 3D world. And what were sort of the ways that we could create essentially a playground for your mind, utilizing all the incredible capabilities of a Quest headset, right? Like everything from the spatial audio to like completely feeling immersive technology, whether it's VR or MR experiences. And so what we sought out to do was really create an XR app that utilizes both VR and MR capabilities to be able to bring mindfulness and meditation to a generation of people that might not purchase the mobile app. So it's really about like meeting that audience where they are on the Quest headsets and creating a really engaging experience that allows you to move, to play, which are like two aspects of mindfulness that I would say like not everybody really knows about so much. And so really expose you to that. And that's what we were aiming to do.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been using Headspace since probably 2017 now, and I've seen the app itself on the phone just expand and expand. Like even this morning, I was just like relaxing before starting my work day, and I'd have one of the music's playing. I think I had the Hans Zimmer one playing in the background.
Yeah.
And it's just normal in my day-to-day life, and it's not even if I'm doing the meditation. There's like so much more to that. And then you brought it to TV as well. I saw like some Headspace and Netflix, and that gives you that fun kind of visualization as well as teaching you the basics and such. So when I heard about that Meta and you guys have partnered up to bring this app, I was super excited because I was like, okay, how are they gonna bring it into VR? Like what could they do? And it must be kind of exciting for your team to kind of explore a completely new space. And I'm just curious, like, why did you go the route for like a playground, to have like a digital playground for people to jump in rather than just having like a VR version of the mobile app in the end of the day? Like, why did you go that route?
Yeah, such a good question. I mean, I would say like our initial pitches were maybe a little bit closer to that idea you're saying.
Yeah.
I think Meta pushed us and we pushed ourselves to really be innovative. I think we are thinking about, hey, what's the audience we're targeting here? Why are they utilizing Quest headsets? How could we maybe get a generation that might not practice mindfulness to practice mindfulness? And I think that's where we really wanted to lean into the idea of play, right? It's like gamers play all the time. They get into flow states all the time, but are they actually taking care of their mental well-being as they play? And so is there a way we could sort of almost engage that audience in a language they really understand, in something they really like to do, while also honestly exposing a pillar of mindfulness that people don't often know about, which is play, right? Like I think as children, we play all the time. I don't know, nowadays, like children are playing less often, and we're seeing how that sort of affects them, right? They're like, we've seen so many things come out recently, really talking about, addiction to like sort of social media and tech and those implications on well-being. So for us, it was really about play releases dopamine in your brain, right? And it helps release it helps release chemicals in your brain that really help you to combat stress and anxiety and help make you feel better. And this idea, right, of being able to come in headset, feel fully immersed, and actually just like let go and play in this playground for your mind, take some breaths, really sort of abandon whatever you came into headset with thinking about. Because when you start to play in there, and Dan, I don't know if you've been in, but like when you start to play, you really do forget about everything else. You get into this state of mind where you're playing with the flow bursts and releasing them against, the colored palette walls that we have there. And like, you're just having fun. And I think we forget how important it is to just play and have fun. And so that was something we were really excited about, because you can't do that in a 2D mobile app.
No.
You know, like not to the extent, right, that you'd really want to be able to leverage a pillar like that.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. I kind of wish my co-host could make it today, but unfortunately he couldn't. But him and me are very different VR players. Like, he would be in VR constantly and play the games and come home from a day from work and still play and such, where I'm the opposite. I find when I go into VR, I'm a little bit, okay, I need to be kind of energized to use it, because, you know, there's physical activity, you're so immersed and such. But what I found is, because of how like relaxing, or how that state of that playground is in Headspace, like even if I'm like tired or mentally exhausted, I can still jump into that app and still like feel relaxed, and, you know, do some box breathing, do some of that energy flow and such like that. And I think you've really captured that with the playground. Does that give that sense of just calmness, which is really interesting, because a VR world could be very stimulating, but you've done really well to kind of balance that and reduce that. And it kind of got what you're asking for in a way, because you wanted to keep that playground a place that people can just go and de-stress and just add some playfulness and relax, right? But
yeah, I mean, it's spot on. I think like there are like sort of two things there that you tapped into, which is like, when we thought about gamers, actually, we're like, do people, when they play VR, sort of need a little bit of a warm up before they just go in to play? And so that's really where the power up experience, which is like the more mindful movement based experience, came from, because it was like, ooh, if people can warm up with this experience, then they can go play their other games, but they're going to find, right, hopefully, that their focus and their energy is much more alive. You know, and then like similar speaking was like, okay, I don't know if you find this with your co-hosts either, but like, if you're playing a game, intense game, and then you want to take off your headset afterwards, your heart is still racing. You're sweating. Like, my husband does it all the time. I'm like, he's not ready for bed yet. So it's like, why don't you come after you played whatever game you just played, come into Headspace XR, go do a body scan, go do some box breathing, go do the fireflies. Like, you will then be ready to take your headset off and like actually get ready for bed.
Yeah, it kind of makes me want, like, when I'm in a game, I could have like a Headspace overlay that I don't even need to exit the game. I can just press, okay, now decompress, send me straight to that world. But maybe when the headsets get more powerful. I'm curious, because you kind of alluded to it here, but your primary target audience, is it pretty much just gamers, or is it more, is there like an age demographic to that as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely an age demographic. Like, we really targeted Gen Z with this app. I think knowing that they're like a bulk number of Quest headset users, and so obviously, like, you know, wanting to really engage that audience. But what we also know about that audience, which I think is so important, is, you know, I read in a Forbes article, like 73% of Gen Z says they report feeling like alone, like at least sometimes or always. That's so crazy. It's just in a world where we're like more connected than we've ever been before. The loneliness epidemic, like, and so it felt like we have an opportunity again for a generation that is actually very open about talking about their mental health, but might not be as engaged about taking care of their mental well-being. Is like, let's meet them exactly where they're playing, in language that like feels inviting, and in a space and in a way that feels not necessarily just like your standard eyes closed meditation, which we know can oftentimes be a barrier to entry as well, and develop something that they would want to play in. For
sure. And I know you have like tapped into some children meditations in the mobile app and such, but, you know, I think when I'm intrigued with the Gen Z kind of research. Like, have you seen the research saying that sitting down doing a standard meditation with their eyes closed is probably something that's just not appealing to them, because maybe the generation, the guess the generation below me is more, I want to say maybe self-diagnosed an ADHD, maybe potentially from all the stimulation and such like that. So getting them to sit down and just close their eyes might be too much of a step, like you said, as a barrier. And this might be potentially a gateway drug, I use that in air quotes, to actual proper like sit down meditation and such. Is that kind of
I would never like. No, totally. I get it. I would never like generalize and say like, the entire generation can't sit down and meditate. I do just like, we know research wise, right? Like that we've seen from our own members in the 2D app, people messaging like, hey, do you have any eyes open meditation? Are there more movement meditations? Not every, I think like a lot of people are even scared to try and meditate, right? The feedback you often hear is like, I don't want to be alone with my thoughts, or like, I get too distracted. It can feel very intimidating. And I think like something our mindfulness teachers in the app are always telling us, and in Headspace XR as well, like there isn't one way to meditate. And I think that's like always been the message from Headspace. There isn't one way to be mindful. There are so many ways to incorporate this into your life. And it is a lifestyle, and it is something that you have to practice. And so to me, it is, yes, about showcasing to the world, and to Gen Z specifically, that here are other ways that you can do this and feel better. And it doesn't have to feel so intimidating.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to go into like some of the activities that you can do in the app in a moment. But since the app has been out for a month or so now, how has the reception been about it? And has there anything that's been surprising to you? Like, have you noticed people using a specific activity more than others, or how's the reception been?
Yeah, I mean, I very honestly, like we just launched. Yeah, it feels like honestly almost yesterday. Like research still very new, data still very new, so hard to draw any sort of conclusions at the moment. What I would say is like feedback in terms of user reviews have been extraordinarily positive, which is really exciting. I think there's also been a lot of really great feedback from our users in terms of like, hey, if we were to ever do more or release additional content, like what people are looking for. But I've loved to hear from people who are mobile users who've come into trying Headspace XR and see the value in it. It's been really amazing hearing feedback just on the play elements that we've incorporated and hearing how people have like enjoyed that. And it felt, the thing I love the most is hearing like how unexpected it all is. I think people have a lot of preconceived notions about what to expect when they come into a meditation or mindfulness app at any time in a Quest headset, and it's going to be breathing. It's going to be these beautiful locations. But I think the fact that we've created this immersive world where there are these like 13 unique experiences, and right, it's not just for you, but it's a place that you can come with your friends to really like check in with yourself, check in with each other. Feels like it's resonating. So I was like really happy to see that. Also just in looking at sort of some of the press outlets that have been able to cover and demo the app, the sentiment has been really largely very, very positive. So it's been really exciting.
That's great to hear, because I really do like the fact that you've gone in you've gone in the direction of just simply uniqueness, because there are other meditation apps on the Quest, and even there's some like fitness apps. I think Supernatural in the States, that has its own like meditation area as well. But it is like, a specific method of how they've done it, and you've kind of gone against that and, you know, done the playground method, how, you know, no one's really done that before. And it is very surprising when you go in and you're like, oh, I have this like magical fairyland world, fairy tale world and such, and there's these balloons that pick my emotion and such, and it's so different. And that kind of goes straight away into what these activities are. And I think we should start from the start. Like, when you do arrive in this playground for the first time, you have these, like, I think there's 5 or 6 different like emotion balloons that are scattered in front of you. And it's like a daily check-in, right? I noticed something similar on the app when I can just check in and answer questions. But this is a simple, you go in and what's your mood and such. And I love that aspect of it. I also love the sound effects that you put in with the balloon and it goes away. It's something that you just can't do anywhere else apart from VR. But the interesting about those emotions I wanted to bring up was that your meditations or activities rather around you kind of slightly differ depending on the emotion you pick. Like, with that, like, can you explain that choice of idea in terms of like having that daily check-in and having it impact the rest of the playground experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's imperative for us as like a mental health platform to be able to personalize and meet people exactly where they are in their moment of need. There's a lot of content in Headspace XR. I'll just tell you that, like, a lot. For each mood that you might choose, there's like a lot of content. And it was very important to us to be able to ask that question to people when they come in. How are you? How often do we get asked that throughout our day and don't actually really answer the question? Fine. Are we really fine? Okay, maybe you're happy today, which is awesome. Share that. But like, maybe you're anxious. Maybe you're lonely. Maybe you're just bored. Because that's very real too, right? And I think like normalizing like language around emotions is really, really important. But then being able to check in with yourself, see how you're really doing. If you're with friends, they're doing similar thing. So it's actually a space that we've created for you to be able to come with your friends and really check in with each other. Right? Actually share how are we really doing today?
And have that conversation potentially with others as well that you normally won't do. Yeah.
Exactly. And have that conversation in a space that feels really safe, and then have that content really tailored to meet you where you are in that mood. To be able to give you some guidance on that emotion and how to deal with that emotion, which are, you know, our 2 teachers who you hear in Headspace XR, Dora Kamau and Kesanga Jeskombe, are amazing at. Like the way they tailor the introductions to the meditations and sort of make you feel less alone in what you're feeling, but then also help guide you through that emotion, how to react to it, how to deal with it. Right, will hopefully be able to guide you so that when you're out of headset and that emotion comes up for you, you hear their voice in the back of your head, helping you navigate through it.
It's amazing because, I mean, you probably get this in just the standard Headspace app all the time, but it's amazing how simple a slight little change of language or so from them can completely change your mood. Like I think I put either bored or lonely, I can't remember, just to see what it kind of was like. And I went to the tree tops where I did the box breathing in the like nighttime trees. And I was like, all of a sudden, like just from his like brief, like little paragraph that he said, and then we go straight into the box breathing. All of a sudden, I just feel this calmness, as well as the sounds that you have, the immersive sounds and such. And it's incredible. It's one of those things that with all meditation in general, that people just don't get it until they experience it themselves. And I think this really stays true about this Headspace XR app, is that maybe on the surface level you're like, oh, Headspace meditation, you know, I'm not sure if I'm going to be into that. But then you go and try it and you realize how different you feel when you take that headset off. It's like an experience that you just can't really get in any other aspect in VR today. So Yeah, I love the daily check-ins.
Oh,
I think
Dan,
it's
that's like
fantastic.
so heartwarming, honestly. Like, I mean, it's like for those exact reasons, honestly, like that's why we created it. And
Yeah.
I do hope people will leave those preconceived notions of like, if you haven't tried meditation, if you haven't tried mindfulness, but you've been like remotely intrigued, or honestly, you're just feeling shitty, like straight up, and you have a headset, like get in there, try it out, like, and see how you feel afterwards. Like I honestly, I challenge like every Quest owner, like get in there and see how it feels.
Absolutely. And I really want to talk about my favorite activity, and that's the energy dome. It's on the left side of the map. You go in and you have it's very clever because like your hands become these like spheres for people listening. And if you bring your hands towards you, the spheres come towards you. If you bring them out, they go out. And then there's like patterns that you can follow, and there's music, and it gets a little bit more challenging as it goes. But it's never like, oh, I'm going to be sweaty or anything. It's just to, like you said, engage playfulness. I must have done the energy dome countless of times since I bought this app, because I absolutely love it. I think it's really cool. How was it when, as like a content creation side, like to come up with the ideas like that in VR? Like, was it really fun because this is a medium that you've not really explored before to come up with ideas like that?
Yeah, so it was extraordinarily fun. And we did this, we couldn't have brought this app to life without our partners in Nexus Studios. I don't know how familiar you are with Nexus, but they're an award-winning production company, and they've worked on so many different types of projects, but have like a very large expertise in the world of like immersive technology and VR and MR. And so we honestly like iterated on what we called like mindful movement for quite a bit of time with them. We like, I'm thinking back to sort of early days on what it was, and what it became. We were really trying to figure out the perfect sort of medium between Beat Saber meets Tai Chi. Because who doesn't love Beat Saber? I mean, it's so fun, right? I think like it's really, really fun. It's really satisfying. I think you sometimes can feel like if you don't like get it right, you want to try again. And like Tai Chi, which is such a mindful in-body experience. And that was like the other thing, was like we really wanted to create something that did truly have the science behind the factor of movement, which to us meant, there's a big word I'm going to use on a podcast. I literally like never heard this word prior to this, and maybe your listeners know it well, but it's proprioception. And I don't know if you're familiar with it or not.
Yeah, can you please define it?
So it's essentially, and by the way, anyone who Googles it, if my definition is off, no worries there. But the idea is that like you really being present in your body, and focus on where your body is in space and time. And hopefully that's like what you sort of experience when you're in there. I think it's like another moment where you go into the power up experience and you're playing with these orbs, absorbing the energy shapes that you see in front of you. And you're again, like very aware of where your body is in space and time, and really in your body in that moment, sort of again, getting into a flow state and letting go of whatever it was that you were thinking about when you put that headset on in the first place. And that's really what we were looking for. I think we are looking, and I would love what you sort of said around, it does get more sort of challenging as you go. But never like you're gonna, okay, this isn't like a full workout routine. No. It's really supposed to be something that helps you with your focus, and really also helps energize you so that you feel really, really good in your body after experiencing power up.
I think you've done a great job with I mean, this speaks to other activities, which we'll get to in a moment, but like the animations that happen with like the sparkles or the colors that come up and such, all of that just adds to the immersion. Was that another big thing that like Nexus kind of brought from their experience into the app?
They did. I mean, it's like the particle effect, right? I think the whole idea around how you engage in the world is that, and this is a metaphor for, right, the life. And I think like the way Headspace talks about how we live our lives, which is as you engage with the world, as you dive into different experiences, you'll see like your own avatar and these particles, right, come to life more. Not only in obviously like the particle form, but in the flow bursts that end up coding your avatar. And the idea is, right, is like everything we do in life affects us. And then we then go and affect the world around us. And so we really did want, we wanted both your avatar to feel like a living, breathing thing that, you know, a representative of who you are, but also the fact that like this world is affecting you and you're physically seeing that. That's another thing, right? We can't do that unless we're in immersive technology. Right. So seeing how it affects you and then being able to leave your imprint on the world as well, in sort of this like energy transference, which we love. And so that was very intentionally designed in order to bring those elements to life.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought the avatars up because I actually completely forgot about them. But I remember I didn't actually realize what I looked like, to be honest, until I jumped in with a friend of the show, D-Max, who's a patron of ours. He came in with me. He's been trying the app, and some of those questions that I've asked you is from him as well. And I remember looking at him, I was like, that's what you look like. I didn't realize. So was that the intention of like the way the avatars are? Was it because it's going to be like some sort of art palette in terms of those emotions, that there's loads of space kind of that you can kind of splish splash on yourself and others around you?
Yeah. I mean, listen, the avatars were very intentional, just as like everything, honestly, in the app. But we and again, like sort of early iterations of those were really interesting to sort of look at and iterate on. But yeah, we wanted, I think like there's so much focus in our everyday life on our physical, right? Every room you step into, right, you have to be conscious about it. And we're all carrying that with us wherever we go. We wanted you to be able to abandon that, to show up in this space with, right, this like gender neutral, right? You don't get to design it. And then there's also like the decision fatigue of everyday life too, right? Yeah. So many of the apps and quests where you can design your avatar and you can
so many choices.
Everything from, so many choices. And there's just decision fatigue. Like, how can we make it easier for people to just come into this space, interact with it, and then also very much so be able to personalize it, but in a way that says like, hey, I just experienced, you know, whether it's power up or box breathing or the body scan. And now I have this like really amazing sort of like imprint on my avatar. And there's a way to reflect like, wow, you just did something for yourself. And there's this physical representation on your avatar that sort of is able to signal that, so that when you do see yourself in the world, you can be like proud of all of that work that you just did.
Absolutely. And I think it's something that maybe people won't get until they, you know, after a while. And I'm glad you kind of spoke to the definition, the intention behind the avatar, because I always went in thinking that my meta avatar would just be in here and such. But it's all intentional, just like you mentioned. And moving on to like another one of my really, really favorite activities is the incorporation of mixed reality and box breathing. And for people who are obviously listening to this who haven't tried it yet, essentially there's specific activities that put you into mixed reality, and then you can draw a rectangle or a box, rather, I guess a square, around something in your room. So say I did it over a picture or a photo frame. You could do it over a window or such. And then all of a sudden, your box breathing lines with all the particle effects and such goes around that actual object. I love the fact that you brought mixed reality in here for starters, because obviously that's a big thing about the Quest 3, and the fact that you managed to put box breathing in it, and it makes it so effective because you're in your real world. Did you consider like making all the activities mixed reality, or was it always going to be more of a mixture of having some in VR and some in mixed reality and such?
I mean, very honestly, when we started, we didn't have too much MR in until we started learning about, obviously, like the capabilities of the Quest 3 headset, and realizing, wait a second, like, and talking with Meta and really hearing about how they were leaning more into MR.
Yeah.
So in doing that, we decided to incorporate it into our experience, but always with the intention, right? Every experience is designed to be able to help you so that you can experience it in headset, but then bring those tools to your everyday life. Well, there's nothing really that does that better than MR, right?
Yeah.
You being able to create that space on a window or a TV or, right, like whatever, a piece of artwork in your home, and be able to do this exercise. Then when you walk by that window, right, later, or you walk by that TV or that piece of art,
you can imagine,
maybe you will remind yourself, right, to breathe. Maybe you will remind yourself there's another, you talked about one MR activity, but there's another one where we incorporate sort of a loving kindness meditation. And like, maybe you will be a little bit kinder to yourself and quiet that like negative self-talk that we all sort of struggle with outside of the headset too. So it was actually really exciting for us and the Nexus team to figure out like what we wanted to tackle in MR. And I'm excited, honestly, to hear even more feedback on it. But so far, it feels like the user reviews have really been enjoying it.
Yeah, I love that reasoning of like things that if you do it in mixed reality, because it's in your space, you might remind yourself as you go about your day of thing. I think that's a great idea to it. And I think the reason why I really loved mixed reality as well is the fact that when you're in your own room or in your own house, living room, wherever you are, you have that sense of safety that you may not have in the VR headset at times, because you're in a completely different world. And being in your own home and incorporating those like mixed reality elements, I think only just enhance the experience. From at least that was my experience. Obviously everyone's going to go in here experiencing something a little bit different, but it was the imagine there's a part of safety where I could just lay down on my bed and draw like a square on my ceiling and have that working. It's just a different way where in VR you can still achieve that, but then it's just a slightly different experience, and you'll feel a bit different with both approaches. So I'm glad you've kind of got a mixture in there and didn't just go one or the other. So
yeah, I think it also hopefully, right, ends up making you even feel like your home is a place where you can practice mindfulness.
Yeah.
Right. Where you like can like feel better and like creates a space, like it creates a space within your own personal space to remind you to do that. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, obviously, like you've got those tons of activities, but after you kind of go through some of them, you unlock the blue sky area, I believe it's called, at the top. And when you go into there, you have some of the playfulness in terms of your, splashing your emotions and or like what you've gathered and with the flow and such. You have that, but you have traditional meditations in there as well. And first of all, I want to ask, with those traditional meditations, are they some meditations that have come from the app itself, or are they kind of just been made for this experience?
Yeah. So a lot of the meditation content in the Blue Sky platform is meditation content from the mobile app that we wanted to make available to people in Headspace XR as well. We know that there's so many people who like love that content, and Dora and Kisanga have such, I mean, such a great amount of helpful content that we knew we wanted to surface somewhere.
Yeah.
in this product, and it felt like the perfect place sort of in the Blue Sky platform, because it only gets unlocked right after you've engaged with a number of experiences. And the whole idea behind the Blue Sky, if you're not a Headspace fan, I mean, if you are a Headspace fan, hopefully you know it, but the idea is, right, that the blue sky is always there, right? Your thoughts are like clouds, and they come in, and they sometimes, right, end up blocking that blue sky. But you have to remind yourself that the blue sky is always there. And so to us, it was this idea that you engage in enough experiences where you can unlock the Blue Sky platform, which ends up being a really, really beautiful place to be able to practice some of these audio-based meditations, being able to look out on the playground of your mind, and have like this beautiful view in front of you, but also be able to listen to this content that could be really beneficial to your life.
For sure. And the way it's done as well, it's kind of like a bit of a minimalistic area. Is that kind of by choice to kind of just develop this kind of like quiet sanctuary to kind of just get away a little bit and just sit and meditate?
Yeah. We wanted it to feel really different than the rest of the world. And again, like really wanted to figure out what could feel enough of a, I think, like reward for all the experiences that you just engaged in, outside of just like feeling better, but like what could be this visual reward that you get being all the way up there with that beautiful view of the world below, and being able to sort of choose where on there that you might want to practice one of the audio meditations.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And like we kind of alluded to at the start of the podcast, is like if you like those meditations, then you also have the TV shows, and now Netflix. You also have the app, so you also have more sources to kind of seek that once you're, if you want to come out of VR and carry it on somewhere else. What I also want to ask as we move on to kind of the multiplayer portion to round off this this podcast, I just want to ask what your favorite activity is. Like, what do you really like doing in the app?
So funny. Only because you mentioned box breathing, it happens to be one of my favorite activities. I think the reason why it's one of my favorites is because I've done box breathing not in VR. And it's great. Like it totally works. Like it's awesome. But I've had like different stress in my life where I, have put on the headset. This was like sort of in testing phases where I went in to try out box breathing and literally felt like a complete release, like started crying in headset, like was like, whoa, like that was crazy. Like it felt like being in that immersive world, like you said, with the audio, the sound of Kesanga's voice, the visual of being there. Like there was this almost like it was like a warm hug around me as I was breathing. And it really gave me a release that I don't think I like just would have gotten otherwise. I think it really was the full immersion that helped me be able to feel better, which I would say is like, I don't know, a little bit of a word of advice for anyone who's trying it out is like, just because you engage in one experience and maybe you don't feel that doesn't mean you shouldn't try others, because I think like each one of the experiences can tap into something else for you. So depending on how you're feeling, which is like why we recommend certain experiences based on how you're feeling. I would say my second runner up is obviously Power Up, but that's only because like, I think it's the sound that is so satisfying to me when you're using the orb to absorb the energy shapes. And I happen to love the music. And there's like a really like rhythmic quality to it while you're playing that always makes me feel really good coming out of it.
Yeah, I do resonate with that one as well. And it, like you just said, the sound and the visuals, the immersion that adds to where you don't really get those experiences anywhere else is kind of what makes this app unique, because sometimes, if I'm meditating with the Headspace app, I'll turn it on, say I'm sat in the living room, but also my living room's where my TV is. It's where I have a roommate, so that's where, sometimes he'll be walking around and I can kind of hear him, and, we're kind of trained to kind of zone that out and just let those pass. But it makes it kind of quote unquote easier to meditate in the VR app, because as soon as you put it on, you are like fully immersed and you're like transported into that world. And I've done simple stuff, like admittedly not every single day, but very often just jumped in for 5 minutes just to do like a box breath in there, just because of how like I'm escaping from my house. And especially because I work from home, and a lot of people do nowadays. Sometimes your house becomes like your office, and to put on that headset,
I'm right
just
there
to
with
escape,
you.
yeah, exactly. And putting on that headset just to escape is been bliss. It's a lovely escape, which I never thought I'd ever receive in a VR headset. That's just, kind of stimulating in a way with a lot of these apps. And it's impressive that you've created a app that's not stimulating in a very stimulating environment, to be honest.
Yeah, people always like ping us on that, right? It's the idea of like, why are you using the technology that like we know is harming people? And right, like our answer is, well, it's not about the technology, right? It's about like our boundaries with it. It's about how we're utilizing it. And I think like, we need to show up where people are, whatever technology people are using, and use those, use the powers of those technologies to be able to show up for people, and honestly, like elevate it, right? Like how can we teach you to practice mindfulness and meditation, in a Quest headset, and maybe make it more accessible to people who wouldn't necessarily just come and download the mobile app. So I think we do have to show up in those spaces and surprise you, right? And,
Exactly.
and delight you. And hopefully, right, you end up taking that headset off, feeling better to interact and do the work you need to do from home, and be the parent you want to be the friend you want to be, and be kinder to yourself.
Yeah, it is using that device, whatever it may be, the VR headset, the Netflix, or the mobile app. It's using that as a tool, and such, and it depends on how you use it, as how you get out of it. And yeah, it's funny because on the surface level, it doesn't make any sense being on a tool that can kind of provide that. But I think that's just one way of looking at it. I think the main way of looking at it is this is a tool that you can control, and having a Headspace app on there can help you mitigate those problems that can occur if you spend too much time on, say, social media or something like that, or just playing VR games. You may just get way too stimulated and you can't go to bed. So that's, like you said, do your breathing in there and Headspace before you leave, and you'll be just fine.
That's right.
I want to talk a bit about, as we come to the end here, about multiplayer, because I feel like multiplayer is a big component of this, is like having that shared experience, like you've said in this podcast. And I wanted to ask a question from our community member, D-Max, who kind of gave me this question. I thought it was really good. He says, a multiplayer is encouraged in this app. You want people to hang out in the playground and participate in activities together, or just have a chat. People love playing multiplayer games in VR, but how do you see that carrying over into something like meditation, which is generally a personal experience?
Such a good question. I mean, meditation's actually like, it's not always a personal experience. It's actually like, I think like that's sort of like the COVID thought of meditation, but like it's actually a very big communal experience. Right. It's really about like not being selfish at all. It's about being selfless and practicing mindfulness and meditation so that you can be better to others. And then then sort of keep expanding on that so that we're all kinder to each other and we're helping to build community. So I would say like, that's just from the get-go. I do think actually like while meditation can be a solo experience, and sometimes that's what you need, that like it is also a very powerful communal experience. And so I think that's why we wanted the optionality of both. So you can come into this world and you can be in there by yourself if that's sort of what you want out of it. But then we also wanted you to be able to come into the world and create this space that you could bring 7 people that you know, so that you could bring 7 people that you know into this environment that you can be in together, check in with one another, play together, have a space where you can kind of get real, to be honest, again, like, and then as it stands right now, what you'll see is while you can be in sort of the hub area and the playground and interacting in those activities together, if you do want to go box breathe, you're doing that by yourself. You're not doing that with the friends you invited. And so like you do create a more solo experience once you go into one of the more sort of solo experiences, even if your friends are still in the world with you, can then go back and join them, which I sort of love also, because if you were able to unlock something in an experience and then you go back and all of your friends just did it, there's like, again, like a guard that's sort of been let down, and then you guys can sort of like talk it out, right, with each other of like, whoa, like how was that for you? And then I don't know, maybe it stimulates a conversation about how someone's doing or something someone's dealing with that you guys wouldn't otherwise chat about. So I think again, we've sort of made it an option because we know that different people have different feelings, and sometimes you want to be alone, and right, like people prefer that. And sometimes you want to be with other people and you want to create that communal experience, and we believe in both. So.
Yeah, the one thing that I love from the mobile app is you can do your daily meditation. You can see that there's also like 30,000 people who are also doing this meditation. Even though I don't know these people, I can't see them or anything like that. The fact that you know that there's so many people around the world doing the same meditation, it makes it easier to sit down and do it. And, you know, because you are like, it's like going to a yoga class or something like that. It's easier to do it when there's a bunch of people doing it with you because of that sense of community, and you're like, you're not alone. And also what I found as well is that once you jump into this app or go on the mobile app as well, because you know people are doing it, you know you're not alone feeling these specific types of feelings that you don't really talk about. You know, I know just as a man, it's very like not frowned upon, but it's getting better. But talking about my feelings with my like roommate, who's another male as well, has always been a tough thing to do. And it's easier for me to open up to a female than it is a male. And I think this app kind of like encourages that no matter who you're talking to, you still feel the sense of safety that you can open up or can just share what you're feeling. And if you don't want to, then that's fine too. It's just a place that's optional for you, and it's a safe place for you to go in and hang out with your friends. So,
that's exactly right. You got it spot on, Dan. Like that's really what we wanted to create. I think that's the idea also behind the like mood balloons, by the way. Is this idea that like when you do choose an emotion and you sort of see the balloon, right? Like let's say you were anxious, and you see the balloon fly up, you get to see like sort of all the other balloons with it, and understand that like you're not alone. And so it is kind of going back to that beginning point of like, we know that loneliness is such an epidemic, and like, how can we really help people cultivate a sense of community, be like checking in with themselves, feeling like checking in with each other so that they are feeling better about their everyday life.
Absolutely. One last thing on multiplayer, you can obviously invite players or invite your friends and such into your playground, but did you ever look at opening it up to potentially having public shared spaces or public lobbies? Is that something that's ever been as an idea or something that might come in the future?
Yeah, we talked about it. I mean, right now we really wanted to create as safe a space as possible. And so making it sort of invite only was really important to us. And that's like where we're staying for now. Obviously, we can sort of sense and see where we learn and grow. But I think what we know firsthand is this always needs to be a safe space. There's like, this can never not be a safe space. we really want people to be able to come into Headspace XR and take care of their mental health.
Yeah.
And so anything that would be disruptive of that is not gonna be something we want in that world. So for now, like no immediate plans to expand on that. And we really honestly want to hear and see how people utilize it.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's a problem everywhere in any online forum. You go on Reddit, you go on a Twitter or X rather, on social media and such, and you have that problem. But as VR users over here on the podcast, we, especially for free apps, we see that problem of just toxicity online and such. And that's kind of why we created a Discord community for this podcast a couple of years ago, is so people can come into the Discord and find like-minded people and invite people into games that they know they can kind of trust in some sense, rather than being some random public person who, could be a horrible human being and kind of spoil that kind of experience. So
right.
I understand the kind of hesitancy to jump in to a public space, but yeah, as this app grows and such, I think obviously making your app as a paid experience does kind of filter out those people. But I understand the hesitancy, because as soon as someone gets a bad experience from just the person who's joined into their session, that whole session's ruined for them, and they may not even come back in. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. The final question I want to ask is just kind of what can we expect for the rest of the year? You probably can't talk about a bunch of stuff, but is there going to be more content coming, or are you planning to do that, or is it more just to kind of see how the reception is and kind of work on feedback moving forward? What does the next year or so look like for this app?
Yeah, I mean, we're really excited about the launch, really excited to sort of launch and learn and see how people are utilizing it, hear feedback, really see where people are gravitating towards. So no immediate plans just yet on sort of follows from there. But we are really excited about seeing where it's going to go. I think this is our first dive into immersive technology. And so really excited to learn. One thing that we are doing that I'm excited to share is we are going to be doing a study with Virginia Tech and Meta that really sort of tests the efficacy of the app, both in sort of how it builds social connection, as well as how it combats perceived and objective stress. And I think being able, right, I think it's so powerful to be able to showcase a study that could end up saying, right, here's truly all the science behind how this app is affecting people. And I don't know. That's one of the reasons why I love Headspace so much, is you're guys, it is proven meditation does help you, right? It will help lower your stress. And so I'm really excited. Everything we do at Headspace is science backed. And so I'm excited to really dive into the study, and that will come out in 2025.
Nice. That's going to be very exciting, to be honest, especially to see the results. And then you could potentially obviously adapt stuff in the app to target different areas and such. So yeah, I'm definitely excited to see what happens there. But Sara, thank you so much for joining me on this show. Meditation's always been one kind of podcast episode I've always wanted to do, but I always thought I needed someone like yourself or has that experience and such. And lo and behold, your Headspace app came out at the perfect time, and it's been great. Like I said, I really love the fact that you've gone the playground route rather than something that maybe another app's done before. And it definitely, I'm excited to see how this grows and how the feedback from the community and such can make this app truly something that you'd want to jump in on a more daily basis, like I do on a mobile app. So yeah, I really appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks so much, Dan, for having me. I really appreciate the conversation. And yeah, I mean, if you haven't yet, leave a review, would love to, but honestly, it was so awesome hearing your feedback. It's something we don't take lightly. I think especially in the VR community, we really take our reviews super seriously, and we want to make sure that the content that we're creating and the space that we've created really does add value to everyone's life. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you listening and watching, you can get the Headspace XR app on the Quest right now. You can go ahead and buy it. In fact, if you go into our Discord, there's a 25% off code because I've already bought it and I've put that in there, so you can get 25% off. And then obviously maybe I'll join you in the playground. But yeah, thanks again, Sarah, and thanks everyone for listening and watching. And we will see you next week.